how high should we aspire? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The passage this week is from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 5. I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. The easiest explanation for these words is that they were spoken in criticism of the scribes and Pharisees, particularly since Jesus was often verbally attacked by them and stood up to them fearlessly. However, it wouldn't have been much of a challenge to the disciples, who aspired to spiritual perfection, to tell them, "Don't be like those who lack any such aspiration." Jesus, in fact, says only a few verses later, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect." What Jesus was referring to here, then, was the self-righteousness of the priests. Don't seek perfection, he was saying to his disciples, in the image you project toward others. Don't be satisfied with a goodness born merely of ego definitions. The highest virtue is to transcend the very thought of personal virtue in the realization of God alone as the doer. Before this realization, even the thought, I am kind, or I am truthful, is self-limiting. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, the 7th chapter, yet hard the wise Mahatma is to find, that man who saith, all is Vasudev. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning, everyone. I want also to welcome you all, and I'm going to read. And I want to welcome those who will watch us through, I don't know what, probably the internet. I'm not sure, but I see a camera there, so something's going to happen. So when I read this this reading the other day, it's funny. One of the first things that came to mind was I was raised Catholic in a little village in Switzerland, and our priest in the village would sometimes gather students of elementary school after school, maybe once or twice a year. It wasn't very often, but he would gather them and he would celebrate the Mass, and then he would give some suggestions for our religious life. And I remember one time he gave all of us a rosary. I don't know if all of you are familiar with it. It's a string of beads that you say prayers on, and this rosary was made with a fluorescent material. And he told us that if you say the rosary, if you pray the rosary in front of a lamp, and then turn off the light, if you pray really well, the rosary will be seen, will be bright and shining after you turn off the light. And I went home so excited to my mom. I told her about this incredible miracle, that if I pray the rosary, she goes, that's nonsense, come with me. So she took me into her room, she put the rosary in front of the lamp, and then she turned it off, and she goes, see, you can see it, you didn't pray, and you're still seeing. And I thought, I was a little disappointed, actually, because it was so cool that if you prayed the rosary, you could see it. But anyway, and so this priest, I mean, his intentions were good. He was trying to have us pray and be good Christians, but maybe the means to achieve that were not as honest. And I remember that I took it very seriously, though, and I started reading you know, those little images of the saints that Catholics use a lot, saint this, saint that, and in the back, there's usually a little prayer or a little bit about their story of their lives. And I remember reading those, and, you know, all of them prayed so much. I mean, it was all about praying and praying. So I thought, well, I think I should pray more. And so I decided that I would use that rosary and really pray a lot. So I was doing 6 rosaries a day. So one in the morning when I would wake up, one as I was walking to school, one as I was walking back to school, from school, one as I was going back in the afternoon to school, and one as I was coming back in the afternoon, and one before going to sleep. So that was my spiritual practice for that time. And one day I told my priest, and he was horrified. He said, "That's way too much. That's no good." That's no good. And I thought, okay, I'm a little confused here. But but the interesting thing for me was that my soul kind of instinctively felt that I was supposed to do something and not just sit there on Sunday and listen to these nice truths that the priest was talking about, but I had to put out some energy and make an effort myself to achieve. I didn't know what. I was just doing it. And he was just like, no. You just be a good Christian, you know, just go to the Mass and just do this and just do that. And then thinking about it the other day, I thought it's very interesting how, you know, all these things that he was suggesting were not bad in themselves, or, you know, they were all very good. But as Yogananda said, if all you do is good works, all you do is you gather good karma, but you don't really get rid of it. And what we want in this lifetime is to get rid of all the karma so that we can be free. Otherwise, yes, we gather good karma, you know, and it's still there. It's still stuff that we have to get rid of at some point. So this is what I noticed back then in the church, that there's a lot of emphasis on the right structured things to do, in the Sunday thing and this and that. And then when I finally came to Ananda, I realized that Ananda is also an institution. It's not nearly as big as the Catholic Church, but it's an institution. So there's certain guidelines to live together and to, you know, there's a certain direction that is suggested, but by no means is as structured. In fact, there's very few rules. You probably heard Swami say this many times, that we have 2 fundamental principles. One, people are more important than things. And the other one is where there's dharma, there is victory, which basically means if you do the right thing, even when it's not convenient, in the end, you'll always win. In the end, it's always a winning attitude to have. And I've had a very, very beautiful example of how this principle of people are more important than things work. Right after, a few months after I moved here. It was very hard for me to move to Los Angeles. I had just moved from Switzerland to Ananda village, and I was finally getting used to the fact that I'm in a new country, a new culture, where they speak a new language, they have different habits, and I was really liking it. Finally, I was feeling like, okay, I can live here. I can live here the rest of my life. I love it. And soon enough, somebody asked us to move to Los Angeles, and I've never lived in any city, much less a big city like Los Angeles. And so that was a little scary for me. And I also really missed being up at the village. But I never really talked about this too much with the people who were here, except for a very few of them. And then finally, I was finally getting used to being here. I was starting to, okay, I can do this. So I decided to write to Swami one day, just to let him know about this whole process. because I felt like, yeah, you should know. Somebody suggested I do it, so I said, I'll do it. So I wrote to him. I explained how this whole transition was for me, and the email he sent me was one of the sweetest things I've ever received. He answered, first of all, he apologized profusely for not realizing how hard this was on me. And then he said, I think you should just move back to the village. I mean, there was no hesitation about, oh, but if you feel that, no, you should just move back to the village, period. And at the end of the email, again, he apologized for not being aware of what was going on for me. And that was it. And I could tell that both the email and the fact that now he was finally putting his consciousness on this issue, and obviously he was praying for me, things started to shift dramatically. All of a sudden, I could feel that there was a connection with the work here, a connection with the people that wasn't there before. I was really trying to, but it never really clicked for me. And I know that a few days later, somebody told me, I didn't listen to this particular interview, but Swamiji did an interview with somebody here in LA. And I think they were talking about this principle, people are more important than things, I'm not sure. But he said, yeah, and you know, just to give you an example, there's this man who lives here in Los Angeles. He also said he's from Switzerland, so it was pretty obvious who he was talking about. Actually, the person who told me the story said, don't worry, Ramesha, this is Swamiji's concept of confidentiality. But anyway, he said he's from Switzerland. He didn't mention the name. He said he's from Switzerland. And he said, and you know, he's having a hard time here, and I just told him, just go back to the village. And he said, I have no idea how we're going to do here with the music, but it doesn't matter, you know. An important thing that he said and also wrote in the email, your happiness is my main priority. And this is what he said. And so I realized, okay, there are principles, but these principles are really put in practice at Ananda. Somebody once came to Ananda and said, you know, I read a lot about getting rid of the ego, but you guys are really serious about it. I mean, because, yeah, I heard a story a few months ago about a woman who's been living at Ananda village for, I think, 40 years or maybe even more. She was there at the very beginning. And one day, she's still there. She's an amazing soul. And one day, she had a little, not really argument, but a little discussion with a person about something. And this other person was obviously, you know, trying, no, this is how it should be done. And this woman was listening to her very, very politely, and she said, okay, let's do it your way. And she was obviously, this other woman was obviously wrong, but, you know, she said, she backed up and said, okay, let's do it your way. Somebody next to them was listening to the conversation and later told her, why did you let her get away with that? I mean, she was obviously wrong and you were right. Why? And she goes, you know what? I came here not to be right, but to be free. And she realized that the most important thing was to, okay, my ego would like to, yes, no, but you know, fine, let it go. Let it go. It's not so important. It's more important that I know when it's time to back up and give the ego a good, you know, beat. Sometimes you need to do that. And so that was very inspiring. And so I notice more and more as I live also closely with people who are on the spiritual path, how people really take seriously this whole thing of, you know, it's not enough to be kind. I mean, you can almost say that should be almost taken for granted that you are kind and generous, because this is the foundation. But then beyond that is that driving desire to be free. And okay, how how do we aspire this high? You know, we heard Bhagavati reading this beautiful reading from Swami's book. How do we aspire so high? Well, there's several things that we all know. We meditate, we serve, we are kind with each other, we love God, we love people. And of all these things, there is one that is the most important, and that's loving God. The other day, I think it was Wednesday night, Swami gave a beautiful satsang up at Ananda village that was streamed live. I don't know if any of you saw it. It was really beautiful. And at some point, a young man who lives at the community asked Swami, what suggestion can you give to a new devotee? And Swami, without even thinking a second, said, love God, first thing. And then he said, well, but you're not really a new devotee. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And I think this is true for all of us here. I mean, none of us is a new devotee, or we wouldn't be interested in something like this. We wouldn't be so interested, in knowing God. It's not just about following the right thing. You know, Yogananda used to say, most people are interested in spirituality only in the fact that they go to Mass on Sunday, and when they said Amen at the end, then they forget all about God until the following Sunday. So, what kind of religion? It doesn't make any sense. Why do that? You know, but you know, all of us here are here for. We want something more. We're not happy with just that anymore, and so I think we have a great mission, all of us, to accomplish, which is to really get rid of all attachments, all desires, everything that holds us back, to really know God and to remember who we really are. It's not about acquiring anything. It's just about remembering who we already are. And you know, the love of God, I said, is the most important thing, because if we love God, everything somehow seems to fall into place in life. Maybe not quite in the way we anticipated, maybe not at the speed we would like it to happen, but it always does. God has his own way. Sometimes he likes the back door. He doesn't like the front door. Yogananda used to say that God has an inferiority complex. He had these wonderful expressions. But anyway, because he's so humble, he doesn't want us to know that it is he who is coming to us and helping us. But he does it in a hidden way. And like Swami said the other night during this satsang, and many, many other times, the only free will that we have is to decide whether we want to love God or not. It's the only free will we have. And it's just about the whole secret of life, the whole secret of the universe is just about that one thing. Do I love God? Do I decide to bring God more and more into my life? Do I decide to see God in everything I do, in everyone I meet, or not? And when we accept that, when we bring God into the picture, everything falls into place. There's a beautiful story that in the Mahabharata, Shivani talked a lot about the Mahabharata last week, and she's so savvy about it. And it was great to hear all those stories. But there's one story that she didn't tell, and I was hoping she wouldn't, because I thought, this might be something I might tell next week. And I was right. I didn't even know what the topic was back then, but anyway. And so this was before the battle. You know, the Bhagavad Gita is about a big battle that happens between the Pandavas, who are the good guys, and the Kauravas, who are the bad guys. And if I make some mistakes, correct me, because I'm not sure about all these names. Anyway, so before the battle, a few days before the battle, Arjuna, who's the head of the good guys, and Duryodhana, who's the head of the bad guys, decide to go to Krishna, who is a king a nearby kingdom, and to ask for his help, because Krishna has a big army. And so they both think, well, if we persuade Krishna to fight on our side, each one, my side, we'll have a lot more chances to win. So they all run off to see Krishna, and Duryodhana gets there first. But Krishna is taking a nap, so he's sleeping on his bed, and so Duryodhana very politely doesn't wake him up. He just sits next to him. And then Arjuna arrives, and he stands at the bottom of the bed, and, with his hands in prayer position, and he, prays to Krishna and adores Krishna. Krishna is his dear friend, and he's his guru, so he has a lot of devotion for him. And they both wait patiently, and finally, Krishna wakes up and opens his eyes, and the first thing he sees is Arjuna standing at the bottom of the bed. And then he turns and sees Duryodhana there and welcomes them both. And so he says, "Dear friends, what can I do for you?" And so they explain, we're about to start, this war is starting tomorrow or the day after, and we'd like to know if you want to fight, and if so, we would like to know which side you're going to take. And Arjuna said, well, there's two choices. You can either, Krishna said, thank you. You have two choices. You can either have my army, but without me, my big army, but without me, or you can take me, but without army, and I will not take part in the battle. I will just be there. I can give suggestions, but I will not take part in the battle? In the battle, okay. And he says, since the first person I saw when I woke up was Arjuna, I'm going to give Arjuna first choice. And Duryodhana said, oh, okay, I know how this is going. But Arjuna said, without hesitating, he said, oh, I choose you. I want you. I don't want the army. I would love to have the army too, but between the two, I choose you. And Duryodhana is so happy. So, Arjuna, what are you thinking? Okay, I'll get the army. Oh, well. And he runs away because he's so happy. He's got all these people, more soldiers and all that. But Arjuna made the right decision because he knows that where is God, the victory is certain, with or without army. And they were outnumbered, but they won the war. They did win. And so it's for all of us. Sometimes, like I said, God doesn't seem to answer or to come to our aid, but it's always because it's in a hidden way. And it does come, sometimes often at the very last moment, when everything seems desperate. At the very last moment, that's when it happens. We just watched last week, again, the whole trilogy of The Lord of the Rings. And it's so beautiful to see how that, in fact, happens. That it's always like, oh, it's so hopeless. The bad guys are winning and the good guys are outnumbered. And then by just a fraction of seconds before everything seems lost, something happens that you can tell that there's something that comes and helps the good guys win. And I thought this is exactly how it happens in life. And yes, sometimes God comes in a little more, we hear stories, we read stories about Yogananda, having God coming and they're telling him the things to do. But, that's a little more unusual maybe, or maybe, I don't know. At least I've never had the experience. Maybe you did, and I don't want to make it a rule of that. but it always happens. And so how high can we aspire? Well, you've read, when Bhagavati read, be therefore perfect, even as the Father in heaven is perfect. Well, that's pretty perfect. There's not much more perfect than that we can be. But this is exactly where we're all going. There's nothing less than that we are. Even if we wanted to not go there, it would be impossible. All we can do is delay it and delay it. If we decide to, we can delay it. But eventually, there's no other place we're going. That's what we are. That's who we are. We're destined to be there. So why not do it now? How can we do it now? We can just start loving God, practicing His presence in this very moment. As you're sitting there and as I'm standing here, we can just start thinking of God. We can just do everything with God. We can just, say, I'm sitting here listening to this hopefully not too long talk with you. And this is fun. And also for the small things. I got to tell you a really funny story that Bhagavati and Rose were also part of. So one of the first times we came down for the big events with Swamiji, we hadn't moved here yet, so we were going back and forth from and to the village. And this was the night before Swamiji's discipleship anniversary. And we were staying at Rose's. Back then, Rose was living in Lumida, which is next to Torrance. And so it was very late. It was like midnight or so by the time everything was over and we got to her house and all that. So I'll try to make it short because it's a long story, but anyways, I was carrying my luggage upstairs and I knew I had a hole in my pocket. But I was so tired that I put the car key in there without thinking. And the car key fell. There was a stair going up to her apartment, but the stair was open underneath. So there were bushes under the stair. And I knew when I couldn't find the key, I knew that it had fallen there. There was no other place it could be. The car was parked in the driveway, and it was blocking everybody because the driveway is not very wide. So we couldn't move the car. People had to go in and out, and we couldn't move the car. So after calling the tow truck and all that, blah, 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 Rose and I don't know how long we spent looking for that key, but we were there moving all the bushes with flashlights and everything. And I think I ripped a few of those poor bushes, but because it was really, nothing. We were there for, I don't know, maybe almost an hour, I would think. Nothing. So finally, 2 days later, because the following day we were busy doing our thing with Swami, and 2 days later, okay, now it's daylight, I'm going to go downstairs and look for that key. So I was starting to look for the key again, and then I thought, you know what, maybe I should have a different approach. So I sat down, I closed my eyes and meditated and called on Yogananda and said, Master, guide my hand and my eyes to the right spot. So I stood up, I turned around, I moved one bush, I swear, I moved that bush I don't know how many times 2 nights before, and I'd never moved the bush, and boom, the car was there, the key was there. I thought, why didn't I think of that 2 nights ago? It would have been a lot easier. But it's so interesting how, sometimes we think, oh no, this is too trivial of a thought to share with God, but God likes it. Yogananda said God likes it even when we scold him for not, what are you waiting for, Or, when we do something wrong, Yogananda said God is the doer. He's acting through you. And whenever you do something not as good, you can blame it on him. He's happy. See, the whole point is to bring God into our thoughts, into our lives, in everything we do. the good and the bad. It doesn't really matter. The whole point is to bring him into the picture. And if we can remember that, life becomes so easy. I can't say at all that I am perfect at this practice, but I can tell you one thing. The periods of my life when I was really determined to think of God in everything I was doing at all moments were so happy, were the most beautiful, the happiest periods of my life. There was such a joy always bubbling up from my heart all the time. And I thought, why don't I do this all the time? And it's just that, we get caught up in things, we get busy, life just demands a lot of attention on so many things, and it's so easy to slip off of that. But if we can do it, then we can see how beautiful it is, and we want to do more, and we want to do it more often and keep doing it. And then bit by bit, like Master said, if you have God in your mind more and more and more, eventually you'll have God in your mind and in your heart all the time. And then you don't even remember that you're not God. And then that's it. That's the end of it. That's the whole point. There's no other purpose in life. There's nothing else to achieve. There's nothing else to strive for. There's nothing else. That's it. That's all. So it's a very simple thing to do and to remember, not to do, but to remember to do. And let's just start today. It's so worth it. I read recently a beautiful quote from Dayamata. Dayamata, she just passed away. She was the president of Self-Realization Fellowship, the organization, thank you, that Yogananda founded. And when she was very young on the path and she moved to the ashram, she realized very, very soon that her life was not going to be just sitting down and blissfully going to meditation for hours a day, which she had hoped. She realized that she was going to have a lot of responsibilities, a lot of work to do, pretty much like all of us. And she said, but she was overwhelmed by it for many months, and finally, one day in meditation, she got to this realization. She said, she prayed to Divine Mother, she said, Divine Mother, I know I will not be able to be perfect at all these tasks, all these assignments, all these things that I have to do. I will do my best, but I know I will not be able to become perfect at all of those. But if there's one thing in this lifetime that I will try my best to perfect, that's my love for you. And if we can just pick up our lives by the right thread, this is it. This is the right thread. Everything else is as important as it might seem, is not. It's not. And like it says in the Bhagavad Gita, when a higher duty is, wait, how does it go? What conflicts with a lower duty, that lower duty ceases to be a duty, basically. So when we have this high ideal in mind, we won't be able to be perfect at everything else. We won't be able to, have everything perfectly in order, everything perfectly, all of that. But that one thing, God will take care of everything. That God will be able to make everything perfect because of our sincere aspiration to know Him, to be one with Him, and to love Him. And I would... Whoa. That's okay. You have a big variety. That's okay. I would like to close with a beautiful poem from Whispers from Eternity by Yogananda. And I would like to ask you to close your eyes as I read it and try to feel that this is what you are telling yourself and God. And this is the commitment that you make for yourself for the rest of our lives. I take this sacred vow. Never will I lower my love's gaze below the eyebrow horizon of my constant thoughts of thee. Never will I turn my uplifted inner sight away from thee. Never will I let my mind dwell on anything that reminds me not of thee. I will disdain the nightmare of ignorant behavior. I will court all dreams of noble achievement, those of love, kindness, and understanding, for they are thy dreams. Though I dream many dreams, wakefully I will ever think of thee. In the sacred fire of constant remembrance, kept ever alight on my soul's altar, I will ever behold thy presence with the watchful eyes of devotional love. Thy grace has shown me that the dualities of health and sickness, life and death, joy and sorrow, are but passing fantasies. I am finished with those eternally self-canceling delusions. I am persuaded at last that there is but one abiding reality, thy eternal, ever-conscious, ever-new, ever-thrilling, infinite bliss. Let's all do our best to live up to these ideals and be free in this lifetime. God bless you all.